In the very heart of Prague stands a medieval construction that has defied time and human understanding for centuries. The astronomical clock, installed in the old town hall, draws millions of curious eyes every year. Some see it as an admirable piece of engineering, a synthesis of art, science, and devotion. But for others, it is not merely a celestial timekeeper, it is a cosmic surveillance artifact. A clock that began to turn not with the history of the city, but with the fall of something much older, much darker. Ancient documents, symbols nearly erased by erosion, and legends whispered across generations point to the existence of a hidden component, the 13th gear. It does not appear in any official records, but there are signs of its activation during specific astrological moments, always accompanied by eerily synchronized historical events. Could the Prague clock then be just a facade? A shell of bronze and stone for a much older mechanism, possibly linked to the Celestial Rebellion and the most enigmatic figure in Christian tradition? And if it's true, what will really happen when that gear begins to move again? Welcome to another night where mysteries never sleep. I'm Midnight, and this is 7 Nights. Before we begin, I want to ask for your help. Like the video, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It's just one click, but it makes a huge difference in helping YouTube show these videos to more people and allowing me to keep bringing this content to you. I'm counting on you. Have you ever stood before something so ancient, so precise and enigmatic, that it seems to be alive? In the center of Prague, one of the city's most visited spots holds a secret that few truly see. The old town astronomical clock, known as the Horloge, is treated as a symbol of medieval genius. But things start to get strange once you notice what it does and what it hides. What caught my attention is that, since its installation in 1410, no one has been able to fully explain how this clock works with such precision. Of course, it tells time, but it also tracks the movements of the sun and moon, the lunar phases, and even the positions of the zodiac signs. All of this, at a time when people still believed Earth was the center of the universe. How did Mikuláš of Kladno and Jan Sindel, the creators, manage all that with the knowledge and tools available back then? The most curious part is that this clock was built based on astronomical knowledge that shouldn't have existed in that era. And it's not just me saying that. Many modern researchers have asked the same thing. The zodiac dial, for example, doesn't exactly follow current standards. There are symbols with slightly altered forms, almost as if they're encoding something else, something not meant to be understood by just anyone who looks at it. And that led me to the first real clue. During restorations and maintenance, especially in the 19th century, technicians reported finding gears with no visible function. Yes, components that turned, but didn't move any hands. The most intriguing part? Some of them were hidden behind sealed compartments and seemed to be made from unusual metal alloys. This isn't just historical curiosity anymore. This is someone hiding something, and hiding it well. Then comes the strangest story of all. The clockmaker Hannes, who helped renovate the clock in 1490, is said to have been blinded by city leaders, so he could never replicate the work again. A cruel tale, but what if it's not just legend? There are old records mentioning that he tried to access a part of the clock considered forbidden. Shortly after, he vanished from the documents. What did he see in there? Jumping to 1865, a new restoration led by Joseph Mons uncovered an inscription inside the mechanism. It read, "When the sky touches the earth and the stars form the seal, he shall march again." This phrase was never published in official reports. It only appeared in Mons' personal diary. This raises an immediate question. Why would anyone hide a phrase like that? And more importantly, what does it mean? Now get this, during World War II, the building where the clock is housed was bombed. Much of the facade was destroyed, but parts of the internal mechanism survived intact. Decades later, engineers analyzing the components found something unusual. Metal alloys that included niobium and pure manganese, materials that weren't even known in the 15th century. So how did they get there? The most serious modern investigation happened in 1991 by researchers from Charles University. They wanted to closely study these strange pieces, but were blocked. The official reason was heritage protection. But sources close to the team claim that one specific gear was removed and never returned. It was never studied publicly, never exhibited. It vanished. And here begins the connection to something bigger. In the 16th century, Prague became the European center of alchemy and occultism, especially during the reign of Rudolf II. The clock was already there, observing everything. And now it starts to seem like it wasn't just there to measure time, but to synchronize something. As if it were part of a greater system, maybe a surveillance structure that goes beyond what we can see. When you put all of this together, the hidden components, the mysterious inscriptions, the silencing efforts, you realize that the horologe is not just a precision instrument. It seems to be waiting for something. Something tied to the sky, to time, and perhaps to something that fell long before the clock was ever built. And that's why today, the horologe no longer seems like an ordinary clock to me. It feels like a portal, a surveillance mechanism. Is it really tracking time, or counting down to the arrival of something we have yet to understand? After diving into the apparent workings of the horologe, we reach the point where things begin to move beyond the physical and into the symbolic. Or perhaps it's better to say, into the occult. There is a theory that, for decades, was treated as superstition, until real pieces began to be found. The so-called 13th gear, a component never officially recorded in any diagram or blueprint of the clock. Yet, strangely, it appears in old drawings, forgotten in archives that almost no one ever consults. The first mention of this gear appeared in a 1591 manuscript written by a certain Franciszek Krzyż, an alchemist in the court of Rudolf II. The text speaks of an invisible tooth in time, something that could only turn when the stars scream in unison. A poetic phrase, yes, but the strangest part is that it appears alongside a drawing of the horologe, and in it, there is an extra gear hidden behind the central axis. Could this be a code among occultists? Or was it truly something physical, concealed from common sight? During a partial restoration in the early 20th century, a restorer named Antonín Karel documented the presence of a loose gear, unconnected to the rest of the system. According to him, it was made of black metal, extremely smooth and resistant to attempts at scraping or drilling. The piece was taken for analysis and vanished from the inventory. It was never mentioned again in any official restoration document. No one knows where it went. Why hide a part that apparently did nothing? Now look at this. According to astrological calculations made by a group of scholars linked to the Hermetic Society of Prague, there exists a pattern of extremely rare planetary conjunctions that, when reached, would activate a hidden cycle within the clock. And guess what? This cycle revolves around the number 13. It's not 12 gears as everyone believed, but a 13th that only connects when certain cosmic conditions are met. Too much fiction? Maybe. But there's one detail that doesn't quite fit with fiction. Historical records show that in 1623, 1741, and 1914, years when those rare conjunctions occurred, Prague witnessed unusual events. In all those years, there are reports of strange lights in the sky, inexplicable outbreaks of collective madness, and hooded figures watching the clock at midnight. Coincidence, or was someone waiting for something? During an unofficial inspection by a skeptical engineer in 1987, an extra cavity was detected inside the horologe. He made thermal images of the clock and identified an area that appeared to contain a metallic mass not connected to any external part. The project was halted due to lack of support, and once again, the records were never formally published. They only surfaced because he kept copies of the files at home. Today, those images circulate discreetly among collectors and students of the occult. And why would this gear have been hidden? According to a theory developed by contemporary scholars of angelic symbolism, the number 13 represents rebellion in the celestial plane. 12 is order, divine perfection. 13 is disruption, challenge, the element that disturbs the balance. To insert a 13th gear into a clock that symbolizes the cycles of the cosmos would be like marking time for imbalance. The boldest theory, and perhaps the most disturbing, suggests that this gear was made from meteorite fragments. There are rumors that the black metal observed by Antonín Karel was similar to that found in ritual artifacts from Mesopotamia, linked to stellar cults. This reinforces the idea that it wasn't just an extra piece, but a seal, a marker of a time that is neither human nor divine, but older than both. And there's more. This piece, from all indications, does not turn with the rest of the system. It only moves when the exact conjunction of the planets Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars occurs, aligned with a specific star in the constellation Lyra. This has only happened 3 times in the past 600 years. And each time, something happened. Something that doesn't appear in textbooks. The question was never whether this gear exists, but why it was made to remain invisible. If the 13th piece of the clock only activates during rare moments, was it created to open something or to keep something locked away? There is a theory that many avoid discussing, even among serious researchers of the occult. It's unsettling because it links the Prague clock to something that surpasses history, something beyond what the books tell us. And at the center of this theory is a name that causes immediate discomfort: Lucifer. When we speak of Lucifer in this context, we're not referring to the demonized figure of popular tradition. Here, he is described as the first exile, the bearer of light, an entity banished from the celestial plane. According to ancient esoteric writings, there are artifacts scattered across Earth that not only commemorate his fall, but mark the exact time since it occurred. And among these artifacts, one stands out more than all the others: the horologe. Rare documents found in private libraries in Prague mention an object of eternal time, installed in Bohemian territory, created with the sole purpose of synchronizing earthly cycles with the absence of a being expelled from the higher plane. These texts don't cite the clock directly, but they describe its location and shape with precision. When you compare these descriptions with the structure of the horologe, the coincidence dissolves. It's clearly the same. This completely changes the role of the clock. It would not have been created to mark the days, but to serve as a constant reminder that the time since the fall is being counted, as if each turn of the gears brings Earth closer to a new collision with that celestial past. And there is one visual detail on the horologe that seems to reinforce this: the constant presence of death on the dial, pulling the bell. A symbol that many consider theatrical. But what if it's a warning? A forgotten figure, removed during renovations in the 18th century, might have made this purpose even clearer. It was an angel with a scale, originally positioned beside the dial. Ancient sources say he measured the cycles with an impassive expression. In some manuscripts, he's called the Weigher of Ages. The image vanished, and with it, perhaps, one of the most important clues about the clock's true function. There is a line of thought among scholars of Kabbalah that supports the existence of fixed points in the physical world, created to preserve the balance between the visible and the invisible. These points would be seals, maintained by specific structures, symbolic architectures. The horologe appears on ancient esoteric maps with a subtle name: Guardian of the Exile. That's not just poetic. That's literal, if this theory is correct. The number 13, central to this clock and the theories surrounding it, takes on an even deeper meaning. In symbolic traditions, 12 represents order: the signs, the months, the apostles. But 13 is what breaks that order. It is the presence that shouldn't be there, a gear that exists only to remind us that something is out of place, waiting to return. Some believe that this return is not only spiritual. There are records pointing to concrete manifestations during specific astronomical events. In rare moments of alignment between Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars, the clock is said to have shown unusual signs: pointer oscillations, changes in the chimes. In 1623, for instance, reports speak of a deep metallic sound coming from within the mechanism, followed by hours of total silence in the city, as if time itself had been suspended. The clock would mark not only the interval since the fall, but the return cycle. This connects to a doctrine known among occultists as the reintegration. The belief that Lucifer, or what he represents, would return to the physical world after a complete cycle of separation. And the Prague clock would be here to ensure that this cycle is honored. If it is true that the horologe is more than just an architectural landmark, then it is not merely witnessing history. It is tracking an entity. It is calculating the distance between one plane and another. And when the last gear turns, perhaps time will no longer be just a straight line. Perhaps it will be the moment when the one who was cast out walks among us once again. There's a detail that usually goes unnoticed by those who view the horologe merely as an ancient work of art. It is not synchronized with common civil time. It follows a different rhythm, the rhythm of the stars. And when you begin to cross-reference the dates of rare astrological conjunctions with historical events, what appears can no longer be dismissed as coincidence. Some of the most powerful alignments in the sky involve Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars. Generally, when these three align with a specific star in the constellation Lyra, the clock seems to respond. But the most terrifying part isn't in the heavens. It's what happens afterward here on Earth. Because each of these conjunctions has marked moments of rupture. Wars, collapses, apparitions, and unexplained phenomena. And the Prague clock was there, always ticking, always intact. In 1623, one of these conjunctions occurred over Europe at the onset of the 30 Years' War, one of the bloodiest periods in modern history. But what almost no one mentions is that during that specific week, residents reported metallic sounds coming from the clock in the middle of the night. Something like a slow, cyclical beat that wasn't part of the normal mechanism. A sound that, according to accounts of the time, made animals restless and kept people from sleeping. Fast forward to 1741, another identical alignment. Prague is overtaken by Prussian forces in a swift and almost resistance-free occupation. But civil documents from the time record that 3 days before the invasion, the clock stopped for exactly 13 minutes. There was no apparent mechanical failure, and afterward, it resumed normal operation. The technicians couldn't explain it, but in the city hall's internal records, a note was left. The clock decided. In 1914, Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter align again. Shortly after, Archduke Franz Ferdinand is assassinated, triggering World War I. That year, Prague experienced violent demonstrations, outbreaks of mass hysteria, and a fire in municipal archives that, curiously, destroyed an entire wing where old documents about the Orlage were stored. And once again, reports speak of a different sound from the clock, deep, resonant, as if something inside it was preparing to emerge. These data points were recently cross-referenced by an independent group of astrologers and esoteric historians in Vienna. They created a chart overlaying planetary conjunctions with political and spiritual collapse events in Prague. The result is chilling. A clear pattern emerges, and that pattern revolves around cycles of approximately 111 years. Not 100, not 120, exactly 111. That number, according to Kabbalistic tradition, is linked to the inversion of cycles and the manifestation of occult forces in the physical plane. It is considered an incomplete number that imitates the holiness of 1111, but remains unstable. And it is this number that marks the intervals of the theoretical activations of the 13th gear. It doesn't turn on its own, it waits for the sky to scream. And when it does, it responds. During a closed conference in the 1990s, an expert in esoteric chronology named Radek Nemec presented a map indicating that the next cycle would close between 2026 and 2027. During this period, Earth would once again witness a celestial configuration almost identical to that of 1623. His theory was that the clock does not track linear time, but cycles of return. And when that return is complete, the black gear, the 13th, moves. He called it the cycle of release. But release of what? When questioned, Radek simply replied, "What was imprisoned will return." Shortly after that presentation, he disappeared from the public scene. His name no longer appears in any conferences or publications. And his files? They vanished from the Astrology Institute where he worked. These conjunctions are not rare by accident. They mark something. They are like the password to a cosmic vault. And the Orlage may be the only mechanism still active, waiting for that code. For a long time, occult scholars have wondered why a structure like the Orlage, with so many signs of mystical function and unusual mechanics, remained virtually untouched during critical moments in history. Bombings, fires, regime changes. And yet, no one ever dared to destroy, dismantle, or expose the clock's deepest secrets. The answer may lie in something more human, and at the same time darker, a society that protects it, or serves it. Forgotten archives in monasteries deep within Bohemia speak of an order founded in the 15th century, shortly after the Orlage's installation. Its official name was never recorded, but in encoded letters, they are referred to as Watchers. They are neither monks nor scientists. They are something in between. Men and women charged with maintaining the balance between what the clock marks and what it contains. This group doesn't appear in public records, but there are traces. One of them is a curious pattern in Prague's political and administrative appointments. Several figures directly involved in the preservation of the Orlage over the centuries came from the same families, with discreetly modified coats of arms. In some of those crests, one detail repeats, an eye over a gear, a symbol far too clear to be coincidence. Documents from the 17th and 18th centuries show that these families owned properties near the clock tower and held nighttime gatherings. Meetings that were never officially acknowledged but always took place on the same dates. solstices, equinoxes, and specific astrological conjunctions. These meetings involved readings of ancient texts, measurements using astrological instruments, and on some occasions, direct manipulation of the horologe's mechanism. In 1883, a German researcher named Wilhelm Grans, who was investigating secret orders across Europe, spent 3 months in Prague. In his records, he claimed to have observed hooded figures entering the side of the clock tower during the early morning, carrying wooden boxes marked with arcane symbols. Grans disappeared on his 4th night of observation. His journal was recovered by chance, hidden among books in the personal collection of an occultist in Leipzig. It is unclear what the Watchers' true purpose is. Some believe they are legitimate guardians, trying to prevent the clock from completing its cycle and releasing what's imprisoned. Others argue they are accomplices, worshipping whatever the horologe represents and preparing the ground for its release. But one thing is certain, they are still active today. Recent reports from City Hall workers mention nighttime repairs on the clock that aren't listed on any public calendar. Technicians come and go with equipment that isn't registered. Some employees swear they've seen people in ceremonial garments inside the tower, and on more than one occasion, a deep, almost inaudible, sound echoed from within the structure during the night. These stories have become more frequent since 2018. Coincidentally, the same period when the next major astrological conjunction, predicted for 2026, began to form. Scholars who support the 13th gear theory say the cult of the Watchers has already begun the alignment process. They are not just waiting for the sky to shift, they are preparing to act at the exact moment. Some say that if this group succeeds in completing what they call the mechanical ritual, the hidden gear will connect to the rest of the system. And what follows won't just be symbolic, it will be physical, presence, movement, return. The existence of the Watchers is no longer contested by those who have delved deep into this universe. The true enigma is something else. Are they protecting the world from something sealed within the clock, or preparing the stage for its return? Some say that the Prague clock has already fulfilled part of its mission, that the previous cycles were just tests, rehearsals for a mechanism that doesn't operate according to human time, but cosmic time. And now, more than ever, all the pieces are aligning for a new movement, a moment that scholars call the orbital return. And the predicted date is not far off. Between the end of 2026 and the beginning of 2027, a celestial configuration nearly identical to the one recorded in 1623, during the first theoretical activation of the 13th gear, will occur again. Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars will align with the constellation Lyra, forming a celestial triangle that, according to astrological traditions, opens what is called a resonance window. It is at this moment that the clock, if all of this is true, would become something else. Esoteric groups from Central Europe are already mobilizing. Discrete meetings, restricted publications, private astronomical analyses. One of the most recent maps circulating in closed forums shows that the exact moment of alignment will occur on February 13th, 2027. The date is marked as a turning point. The symbol accompanying the map, a black gear with a crack running through its center. None of this is shared publicly, and that says a lot. You might think all of this is an exaggeration, until you learn that the Prague municipal government has blocked new access to the interior of the horologe since 2022. Technicians from Charles University had their projects denied, even with funding approved. There is no convincing official explanation. Meanwhile, security cameras around Old Town Square have recorded nighttime activity that doesn't appear in any public log. Metal boxes being exchanged, uniformed groups entering through the side of the building, leaving before dawn. It's not just the mystery that's growing, it's the tension, because everything seems to indicate that the clock is preparing. Some of its gears, long motionless for decades, were seen turning during recent mechanical tests, even though, officially, no such tests were scheduled. A different sound was heard by local residents, deep, prolonged, metallic, as if something internal were slowly being released. The most unsettling detail? A historical mechanics specialist named Tomas Ruby, who briefly worked on the horologe's restoration in 2017, revealed that he was asked to inspect a piece that wasn't part of the original schematics. According to him, the part looked new, but was covered in inscriptions he didn't recognize. When he asked about its origin, he was removed from the team. He never accessed the clock again. If the 13th gear is truly activated during this next conjunction, the horloge will not merely be a witness. It will be the center of a reconfiguration, perhaps a reopening. Because according to the ancient texts that inspire this entire theory, the return does not come from above, but from within. And the clock doesn't just mark the time of waiting. It marks the exact point of crossing. This kind of synchronization between sky and machine, symbol and matter, does not happen by accident. It is constructed, anticipated, and protected. Those who watch over the horloge are not merely keeping a tradition alive. They are following instructions, waiting for the right moment. And the right moment is marked, etched in iron, hidden in plain sight. What will happen when the hands reach that specific moment? When the gear that never turned is finally activated? There is no clear answer. But perhaps the Prague clock isn't there to measure time. Perhaps it's there to tell us time is up. The Prague astronomical clock may never have been just a piece of medieval art. What it shows on the surface might be just a fraction of something much deeper, created not to track human time, but to mark the distance between two worlds. With every chime, it whispers an ancient reminder that something is locked away, and someone still holds the key. Perhaps the 13th gear is not just a hidden mechanism, but a password waiting for the right moment to release what was never meant to return. This story is just one piece, and one day, maybe you'll see the whole puzzle. If this made you think, subscribe and like the video. It helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share it, because more voices mean more discoveries.